Hey guys, how's it going? It's Thursday. Thought we would do some baking, and as almost promised, we're gonna do hand pies, which are you probably know them as Pop Tarts or toaster pie or toaster pies, or yeah. But yeah, Pop Tarts. But they're really just hand pies. Is all they are. Pop Tart is a brand. And they're basically a pie that you can hold in your hand, very similar to a fry pie. These are just rectangle versus the half moon shape that fry pies are. Yeah, I mean, there's some variance to it, obviously. And I was going to do wild berry because that's what I had done for the cake that you guys saw last week. And I thought those would be fun. And they are fun. We're still going to do basically the same thing, and if you'd like, I can leave the wild berry recipe down below in the description along with this recipe, but instead I thought today we'd do some cherry. I didn't quite have all the ingredients for wild berry, and I've got a bunch of cherries down in the freezer that I need to get rid of, and with this recipe you can use frozen cherries, you can use fresh cherries, either one. And it's pretty straightforward and easy. Now, these do take a second to make. I mean, they're not horribly hard. It's no different than making a pie. You do a lot by hand versus using your food processor or anything like that. But the process is still similar. You're going to take the filling, and we're going to make the filling, and then we're going to let it cool down to room temperature. We're going to make the crust, and we're going to put it in the fridge to chill while that happens. While that's cooling, and then we can bring it all together and stick them in the oven, ice them, and enjoy. But these do have a wonderful icing on them, and just like any other ham pie would have. You know, a good filling, and this crust is amazing. I'm not gonna lie. So, that being said, if you're new to my channel, welcome as always. Glad you stopped by. Hope you get something out of this video. Check out my other videos. If you're returning, thank you. That means you really like being a part of our little neighborhood here. If you are new, the basis of my channel is pretty much food. All aspects of food. Doesn't matter what I do, I can relate it to food. But mostly we do a lot of cooking and baking. Some gardening, canning, stuff like that here and there. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. And right next to it is the notification bell. Let you know when my videos come out. Try to get them out every Wednesday and Thursday. Sometimes I drop the ball. We are a family of 4. And with full-time jobs and schools and stuff like that. So, I mean, life does kind of get in the way sometimes, but not very often. Excuse me, but Wednesdays and Thursdays, dinner, baking. Yep, thumbs up, thumbs down. And that is awesome. 2 reasons, much like the subscribe button, that helps put us out on other people's feeds, which helps to grow our neighborhood and, you know, helps to bring different ideas, thoughts, comments. But it helps our community grow. You know, we're all about being good neighbors and taking care of one another and, you know, spreading the wealth, so to speak. And that's important. It also lets me know how I'm doing with a video. You like it, you don't like it, you're trolling me. Either way, it gets us out into people's feeds. You know, subscribe or thumbs up, thumbs down, or both. I prefer you subscribe. That way, you know, we can hang out together on a regular basis. I like you. I hope you like me, and, you know, why not hang out together for a little bit? I never take your time for granted all the same. I think that's it. Comments always welcomed. I thoroughly enjoy the comments. I try to respond to all of them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with another comment, a heart, a thumbs up, you know, all of the above. And get a little conversation. We also have a Facebook group, Mr. Smith's Kitchen on Facebook. You can check us out there. I post recipes. My wife Chris posts recipes. You're more than welcome to post recipes. It is a public group. I don't ask questions, you know, to get you into the group. It's fine. The only thing I ask is you be a good neighbor. You know, because if you don't, much like on here, we'll probably block you. But anyhow, let's get down to a cherry hand pie, you know, or cherry Pop Tart, or toaster treat, however you want to call it. And we'll start making them. All right, let me get you down to the counter. Hold on for me 1 second. Okay, we're down here to the counter, and to get started, in case you guys are new, look, I finally got a t-shirt, Mr. Smith's Kitchen, established 2018. we are official now as far as a at-home bakery goes, which is pretty cool, I think. And we're growing all the time, you know, growing naturally. I'm not quitting my job anytime too soon to just jump into the pie cake making business, baked good making business. But anyhow, that being said, enough about me. Let's talk about what we can make together. As always, I've got the recipe written down right here. If we like it, we keep it. If we don't, we pitch it. Or if we think we can alter it to make it good, we most certainly will. So, that being said, I've already tested the crust recipe, and we're just going to try out the cherry filling, which looks pretty much like my cherry pie filling, but only on a smaller scale. Things you will need for this. A scale. Baking and scales go hand in hand. If you don't have one, I'm still going to give you the measurements in cups, teaspoons, tablespoons, and grams. That way, no matter where you are or what measurements you use, I'm pretty sure, you can play along. You will need a heavy bottom sauce pot so things don't burn, excuse me, on top of that scale. And that's really it to make the filling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some cherries. I've got frozen cherries here. They're not even completely thawed. They don't have to be dried. They don't have to be they don't have to be anything other than frozen cherries. We want that moisture that's in them. That's what helps make the filling. So I've got 6 ounces or 170 grams, which is about a cup's worth of cherries. If you don't have a scale for grams, go by the ounces if possible. And we're going to put those in there. And to that, I'm going to add my sugar, which is 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of just plain old granulated sugar. Alright, throw that in there, and then I'm going to turn my stovetop on medium. It's about 4 to 6-ish, and we're just going to cook this until it heats up, the juices start to go, and the cherries start to soften, and you know, your juices flow out, and then we can add some more stuff to it. While that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 tablespoons of water, which is 11 milliliters, 11 grams, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons, 6 grams of cornstarch to it. Let me grab a fork real quick. Always forgetting something, I am. I'm going to take that cornstarch, and I'm just going to pour it in my 2 tablespoons of water. If I can get it to come out of the bowl. Cornstarch is amazingly sticky. It wants to just be part of everything. But that's alright. We're going to make it work for us. And I mean, if you're wondering what cornstarch does, say you're new to baking and you're just not really sure what cornstarch does. Well, first of all, it's corn, just shot up into a powder. Hence the corn. It's the starch of corn, which is kind of what gives it flavor. And we're just gonna take our fork and we're gonna blend this together. All right. Which I mean can take a second depending on your cornstarch. Cornstarch is kind of a tricky thing, but it's necessary. It's like I said, it's a thickening agent. It's what helps, make your filling a filling and not just cherries and sugar. All right. So we got that mixed up and ready to go. Once this starts heating up and bubbling, we'll go ahead and start adding, we can go ahead and add our cornstarch and water to it, and then we'll take it from there. So let me get these where they need to be, and then we'll move on to the next steps. All right, be right back. Okay, so we've been going about 5 minutes, and our cherries have softened, which is about what you want. And then I just, instead of using a fork, I just use the spoon I'm stirring it with, and I'm just smashing the cherries up. All right, now, and I don't think I mentioned it, but these cherries are tart cherries. If you want to use sweet cherries, you can. I mean, there's no rule that says you can't. I would just maybe not add the sugar, or take the sugar down to 1 tablespoon instead of 2, or it'll be horribly, horribly sweet. Or you may like that. I mean, then I guess that aspect is up to you. But once we get those good and crushed up and the juices are flowing just like they are, which, yeah, you can see it. We're going to take our slurry that we made of cornstarch and water, and we're just going to pour this in here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to stir this and keep stirring. It doesn't have to be like a fast, vigorous stir, but you want to keep it moving. And what we're going to look for now is we want to get this up to a boil till it starts boiling, right? And then once it starts boiling, and it starts to thicken, we want to let it go for 1 minute. And then once that 1 minute's up, we can move on to the next step. All right, so see how we're starting to bubble and boil? We're going to let this go for 1 minute cooking, and what that's doing is activating that cornstarch. Cornstarch has to hit a certain temperature before it's activated and starts to thicken. I mean, it's starting to thicken now, so we'll go for 1 minute, and then we can move on to the next steps. All right, so we let it boil for a minute, and we are good to go. I don't know if you could tell earlier, but it was cloudy when I put the cornstarch in, and now it's clear. We're in good shape. So what we need to do next is going to turn our heat off, take it off the heat, and to this we're going to add a half a teaspoon. I doubt you can see it real. Yeah, you can see it real well. That's a half a teaspoon of almond extract, and we're going to put one teaspoon, 4 grams. Oh, the almond extract was a half a teaspoon, 2 grams. 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of vanilla extract. We're going to pour that in there. We'll give it a good stir, and then we're just going to set this off to the side to cool. I mean, that's it. That is how you make a cherry filling, and that's pretty much how you would make a cherry pie filling. If you were making a pie, and you would make more of it. You just wouldn't have just this little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and set that off to the side, get some things cleaned up and situated, and we can make the crust. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're on to making pastry. First thing I got right here is 2 cups, 240 grams of flour, just regular old all-purpose flour. And to this, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup, 36 grams of oat flour. Now, don't rush out and buy oat flour. If you have oatmeal or oats at the house, oatmeal, basically, the old-fashioned oats, or I don't know if you use quick oats or not, but I use the old-fashioned oats. I just simply put them in my food processor and ground them up. It's a lot cheaper. You can buy a big container of oats for like $3 versus $11 to somebody else to do it. So, but it's a half a cup, 36 grams of oat flour. We're going to throw that in there. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup, 30 grams of just granulated white sugar. And we're going to add a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of salt into this. Now it's kosher salt I'm using, and if you use kosher salt also, which that's what I use for all my baking, you want to also run it through a food processor or a micro blender or something like that and make it a little smaller. It always comes in coarse grounds, and inevitably you will end up with salt that doesn't mix in well, and you will somebody will get a bite of salt. Never fails. Chris always ends up with a bite of salt. But we're just going to whisk this together real good, real quick. And then to this, we're going to add, get it out of the fridge here real quick. I'm getting 1 cup, 228 grams of butter, and I've got it cubed up. Well, in this case, broke up, because most of it is block butter that I buy at 2 pounds at a time. But some of it was a little bit of the store-bought stick butter. But it's 1 cup, 2 sticks, 228 grams of unsalted butter, and I'm going to spread that in there. And then I'm just going to take my cutter, and you could use a fork too, and do this. And I'm just going to cut this in until it looks like granules. Now you're going to have big chunks in here, or larger chunks of butter in here. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So we'll get this cut in, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so we got her cut in. See how we look very granularly, but it's got big chunks of butter in it still. We want that. That's what's going to give it its flakiness. Now we're just going to make a well here in the center, just like such. And I'm going to add a half a cup, 115 milliliters of cold water. Very cold from the fridge water. And it's been sitting in there for a minute. And then we're just going to fold this in until a dough ball forms. Okay, we're not going to overwork it. We don't need to knead it or heavily mix it. We just want to get a dough ball to form. We mixed it till we got a dough ball to form, and it's not a heavy dough ball, but it's, you know, we were looking for kind of sticky, but not real sticky. And but like I said, you don't want to overwork it, and in that case, it's no different than a pie crust. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some saran wrap, plastic wrap, satin wrap, whatever you want to call it. We're going to stick it in on the satin wrap because we're going to let this chill in the fridge for about 20-30 minutes. You know, maybe not the longest time in the world, but enough time. And we want to form this. Okay, so this is something cool I learned. If you want your dough to be round, you go round. If you want it to be a rectangle, you form it rectangle when you go to let it chill. If you want it to be a square, so on and so forth. So we've got that formed as a rectangle. Wash my hands off here real quick. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And we're going to let it chill, relax, let the gluten settle a little bit. You know, for about, like I said, 20-30 minutes. But we want to, another thing I learned, okay, so see the cracks? If, especially when making pie crust, if you let it chill like that, those cracks will exist. So the more cracks, you know, and so when you go to roll it out, you know, sometimes when you roll out, or maybe you don't, but when you go to roll out pie crust, it'll crack at the edges, things like that. The reason for that is one of two things. Either your dough's still too cold after sitting in the fridge, especially if you've left it in there overnight, because dough can be in a fridge for, you know, you make this 2-3 days ahead of time. You can make your cherry filling up. You could triple that recipe and have, you know, and keep it in your fridge for 3 days also. So we've got that like that. We're in good shape there. Now we're just going to let this relax in the fridge for a half hour. And when I come back, we'll roll this out and start cutting out rectangles for ham pies. All right, I'll be right back. All right, so we are to the point now where we've let our dough rest, so we can roll it out. And what we're going to do is we're going to, you can just use your countertop for that matter. I just happen to have a mat. Makes it easier for cleanup. I can just dump all the excess in the trash and wash it off. But I went ahead and floured my mat, so that way I can move this around. See how easily it moves around? It won't do that even on your countertop if you don't flour. So, and you can just make sure your countertop's clean. Douse it with a little bit of flour. Doesn't have to be a ton. And I'm just going to take a little bit of flour. I'm going to spread it on top, like such. And I'm going to take a little, put it in my hand, like such, and get it on my rolling pin. Now, this rolling pin is actually kind of cool. It's become kind of my standard rolling pin. It has gauges on it that gives me a thickness. Now, I don't always use the gauges, but in this case, I kind of want the dough to be even all the way across. Well, in most cases you do. But, and I want to show you this real quick. I don't know if you can see it or not, but like the chunks of butter, that's perfect. And that gives you your flakiness and your crust. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out so it's about 12 inches wide and 4, 8, 12, 16 inches long at about 1/8 of an inch thick. So I'll just go ahead and start rolling her out. We'll go this way, and then we'll go this way. And I'm going to try to hit my 12 inches first, and then I'll get my 16 inches this way. That way, because my rolling pin is only so long, right? And I want it to be good, or at that size. So let me get this rolled out, and then we'll move on. Okay, we got her rolled out. I got her squared off. I didn't quite get the measurements I wanted, but that's okay because I got the scraps from around the edges because I wanted them to be clean, and I'll roll that back out to get the remaining parts. So what I'm going to do is, I got a ruler. I never thought in my life I would have a ruler to do baking with, but sometimes it's necessary, depending on what you're making. And I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to lay it down there. Now I'm going to grab a knife. Just a plain old butter knife. And I'm going to mark out every 3 inches. And then it's going to leave me a little left over, which is okay because I can roll that back out. And then I'm going to come over here, go this side. I'll do my 3 inches. All right, got those sides marked. And then my ruler's not long enough. I'll be right back in a second. Okay, so the ruler's going to have to do because I can't really find anything to kind of go out as far as 15.5 inches, which is alright. So what I'll do is I'll just hold my ruler there, and I'm using a butter knife instead of a sharp knife because I don't want to cut my my silicone mat below it. And we're just going to cut these lengthwise. Then we'll go ahead, remove this piece here. That's our extra. And then I'm going to come 4 inches down on each of these. And then we'll cut out our four-inch. These pastries are going to be 3 by 4. And I really don't know how many I'm going to get total, mostly because even though I've used this crust before, so I know what the crust will yield, I don't know how much the filling is going to cover. So yeah, this will be something we learn together, which is okay because if I don't use all the crust up, or all the dough up, the pastry, that's fine. I can take it and I can either make more cherry filling out of it, or this pastry will freeze. I mean, I can put it in the freezer, in a freezer bag. I'll lay it flat on a pan, put it in the freezer, let it get frozen, and then I'll just put it in the freezer bag, and it'll be good for a couple months in the freezer. That way, you know, I don't have to go through this part every single time. I could literally make up 2 or 3 batches of these and freeze them as the dough, or I can make them completely and freeze them before I bake them, or I can bake them and then freeze them. You know, it's, you know, there's so many options for keeping these stored, it's unreal. All right, so we got that done. Now the next thing we're going to want to do, since I didn't have enough room on my counter to do up the whole thing at once, is I'm going to take a baking sheet right here, and I'm just going to simply lay these out on the baking sheet and then put them in the fridge, which will help them firm up a little, you know, and continue to relax, keep those glutens at a nice low, you know, state, because we don't want the glutens going crazy. What happens if the glutens go crazy is, okay, so let's say we don't let them relax, or we didn't let them relax before we rolled it out. What could happen with the glutens in the flour is they could easily cause the dough to snap back. If you've ever used like pizza dough, made pizza dough and it snaps back, that's because the glutens are excited, they're not relaxed. So, you know, this just gives those glutens, we've worked it a little bit, so now we're going to give those glutens another chance to just settle down and relax. Alright, let me finish getting these cut out and taken care of, and then we will move on to actually assembling our pastries and getting them in the oven. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay, so I thought I was filming, but I wasn't. But all you missed was I pulled out our pastries. We got a total of 16 squares, which will give us 8 pastries. I took our cherry pie filling that we made, our filling, and I put it on here, and I left around 3/8 of an inch around each side, so that way we can put them together. Luckily, you didn't miss that part. But all we have to do now is take our tops. We'll set them on top of here, just like such. So, and there's about a tablespoon of filling on each one of these, you know, give or take a smidge, literally. Not knowing exactly how much filling to make, you know, I just used a recipe that I found, and it didn't say how many ham pies that it would make, so I just guessed. And I would probably, if I were to do this again, which I will do this again because I absolutely love these ham pies. They are a fabulous treat. I would go from 6 ounces to 8 ounces of pie filling, or 8 ounces of cherry, you know, or even double it, because you can have extra, and it's good for a minute. So like you could use this on ice cream, you know, or French toast, any kind of breakfast type, or dinner, I mean, depending on your thing. So, and after we put our tops on there, I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to go through and I'm going to press these and hopefully not get a bunch of filling out of them like this one is. Get these pressed, and that way they're smashed together. Yeah. And then after we get these pressed on the edges like this, I'm going to go ahead and take my fork and I'm just going to poke some holes in it so that way it vents. Okay, so we got all our pastry sealed, got our holes poked in them for ventilation. That's very important. You want to make sure that happens. And now we got one thing left to do before we put it in the oven, and I don't know if I mentioned it. When you start this process, heat your oven to start preheating your oven to 375 degrees. Okay, but in here I have 1 large egg and about 2 tablespoons of water, and I just whisked it up. And what that does, the water to the egg allows it to flow. And I don't know why I never did that on any of my pies before, but it actually turns out really, really nice. It gives you a more even coat. So we just got to wash this on real quick, and then we can pop these in the oven and talk about what we need to, how long we need to bake them for. Okay, so we got them all coated with the egg wash, which will help them to not burn, give them a good color. We've got our holes poked, we've got all the soft edges sealed. So all we have to do is just stick it in the oven real quick. Let me get that in there. Okay, so they're in the oven, timer is set. So how long are we baking these for? So like I just said, we're going to bake them at 375 degrees and we're going to bake them for 25 minutes. Check them at about 20 though. They should be nice and golden brown. You know, have good color to them. And if you're brave enough to touch them, you know, they should be firm. You know, they'll feel done like pie crust. So, but 25 minutes, that's what worked with the wild berry Pop-Tarts, and we have the same amount of filling in these that we did the wild berry ones. So I can't imagine that that would vary a whole lot. Same crust, same amount of filling, you know, and the filling's done already. We cooked it, so that we're not worried about so much. And but anyhow, we will. I'll be back when that timer goes off, and we can pull those out of the oven, start making the icing for these, and hopefully try one. All right, I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so the timer's going off. Let's pop these bad boys out of the oven, see how they look. They look delightful. There is our Pop-Tarts right there, or our hand pies. Now we'll just take those. We're going to let them sit for a second.
Oh yeah.
And we'll take them and we're just going to put them on the rack. You can see or not. But I'm going to put these on the rack to cool. And while they're cooling, we're going to make the icing. Okay, so we got those on the rack. They're cooling, so now we're gonna make our icing. So the first thing we're gonna need for our icing is it's got 4 simple ingredients. We're gonna need some confectioner sugar or powdered sugar, and we are going to need 3/4 cup or about 96 grams of confectioner sugar. And to this, we're gonna add 2.5 teaspoons or about 14 grams of milk. I had whole milk, regular milk, 2% milk, whatever it is you have available. And we're also going to add half a teaspoon of vanilla. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of maraschino cherry juice. I suppose you could probably also use a cherry extract if you can find it, but hey, we just bought a thing of maraschino cherries, a small thing, and that way I had the juice. I mean, we'll use them on other desserts, things like that, or just eat them straight out of the jar. And then we're just going to take our fork and we're going to mix this into our icing. Okay, so we got our icing mixed up right there, nice pretty cherry pink. And now what we gotta do, we're gonna let those Pop-Tarts continue to cool for about another 5 minutes or so. You want them to cool for about 10 minutes before you try to put the icing on it. If we were to put the icing on them now with them still being hot, the icing will literally just slide right off of it. And you may like that. I mean, you may like it to be, you know, all over, unorganized. I mean, realistically, it wouldn't bother me. But right now, because this icing, unlike when you buy store brand, you know, store bought Pop-Tarts, you know, or ham pies, the icing that's on those, I don't know what they put in them, but the icing doesn't melt. That's why you can put them in the toaster. These you cannot. So if you're not going to eat them right away, I wouldn't ice them. I would wait to ice them until you go to eat them. That way you can warm them up. Stick them in the oven for a couple minutes, warm them back up, you know, and you can put your icing on them then. I did read one recipe that said that to reheat, if you wanted to heat them up or warm them up again, use a frying pan and put it and warm the frying pan up and stick them on the frying pan, and that way it heats it from the underside up and it doesn't melt the icing, and it only takes like 30 seconds to a minute. But that's the only way. But really, realistically, at least the wild berry ham pies we made, they were really good cold. It was just because it's like eating pie. This flaky crust, even though it's similar to a manufactured ham pie, it's not. It's better. 10 times better, I promise to all that is holy in the world. So anyhow, let me get these cooled down, and when I come back, we'll get these iced up and try one. All right, be right back. Let them cool for about 10-ish minutes or so, but they're, yeah, I can touch them now at any rate. And we're solid there. Take our icing, give it a good mix because it's been sitting. This icing does get hard. It gets firm. It's like when you make Christmas cutout cookies and you ice them, same icing. So if you ever need a recipe, you know, if you want to change the colors in it, you just don't put the maraschino cherry sauce in it. You put food coloring in it, and that'll give it its color. So we'll put some on our ham pie there. Now I'm going to take my offset spatula. You can just easily use your spoon, but I want to use spatula. And we'll cover it with the icing like such. And you can layer it on as thick as you want or as thin as you want or however you want to do it. They're yours. I mean, you make them how you like them. You know, I know Chris, when it comes to like strawberry Pop-Tarts or ham pies, she doesn't like icing on them at all. She likes to just have some, you know, plain old ham pie. And that's okay. You know, if you don't want icing on yours, you don't have to have icing on yours. That's kind of the beauty of these. Yeah, you make them how you want to make them. We could put sprinkles on them. I mean, there's a million and one things we could do to these. So after I get this icing on here, we'll give one a try and see how it turned out. I know they smell good. They look good. That's 2/3 of the way there, right? So we are iced and ready to go. I got a plate so I can bring one up close to you, or two, because that's how we roll. And there we are. That, my friends, is a cherry hand pie that has no preservatives in it, no additives, nothing. Hey, there's nothing in there that, store-bought pies like this have a bunch of preservatives in it, things you can't pronounce, stuff like that. And that's not really healthy for you. I mean, they're not bad every once in a while. I'm not telling you to never eat them, because Lord knows I had my fair share over the years. But if I can make something that I know everything that's in it and it's just a touch healthier, I'm going to go for it every time. But anyhow, enough talk. Let's try one of these bad boys and see how we did. That is off the hook, my friends. Just off the hook. Little bit of effort, a little bit of work. I mean, not even really work, but a little bit of effort, a few moving parts, right? But holy cow. Well worth it. That is amazing. Try this. You guys need to try this recipe. That took me all of about an hour and a half to make. Total time. That was with prep, letting it sit in the fridge, talking to Chris and getting sidetracked. And that made me 8 really good pastries. That you can't shake with a stick. Way better than any store-bought stuff. Way better. Hands down. So, give these a try. I mean, for real. Use this recipe, give it a try. If you'd like some other filling ideas, let me know. Leave a comment down below. Find me on Facebook. We have our group, Mr. Smith's Kitchen, which I think I mentioned at the beginning. You can ask there. And I'll be happy to find filling recipes for you. I'll probably post a wild berry filling down below, along with the rest of this recipe in the description. But try this, and if you do try them, let me know. Leave me a comment. You can be like, dude, these were amazing. I think they're amazing. Or you can be like, I've had way better. Your recipe's fair at best. I mean, whatever. I'll take it. I take the good with the bad. I don't learn if I don't know, right? And like I've said a million times, I'm no professional baker. It's not like I have a degree in this, or I went to school, or I do this for a living. Well, I kind of do it for a living. But everything I learned myself, and I learned something new every time I bake something. I have never baked a hand pie before. I've never made this crust before the wild berry ones I made. So I'm always learning something. As I've said before on this channel, I make things that are new so that way you can see if I can do it, you can do it. I mean, I'm nothing but an old man, and we seem to do okay. So, that being said, let me know if you try this. Next week, I have no idea what I'm doing for dinner or for dessert, but we'll find out. I'll be here Wednesday for dinner either way it goes. All right? I love you. I love you very much. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Tell somebody else you love them and you love them very much. Share some of these hand pies with them. They're going to know that you love them, and they're going to think they're the most important thing in the world, which they are. So, until then, see you next week. I love you. Bye.